Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Be a Great Player. My name is Guy and today we're looking at the race, the Half-Orc. Now, a Half-Orc is something that's very tall. According to one book is grey, but I would think of them more as being an olive green kind of colour. And they're very strong. And the problem is they're not really liked by true orcs, and they're rather feared by humans. So that leaves them in this weird limbo space where you've got someone who's basically a passionate walking brick shit. Well, basically, half-orcs are this giant muscle of emotional angst. At least certainly that's my take-home from having read the various books that describe the half-orc as a playable class race. It's a very difficult race to play, in my opinion, because it's such a fringe type of character. Now, there are many fringe types of characters, tieflings principally amongst them, but the half-orc is really the individual who doesn't live in one space or in the other, and has to prove themselves in both spaces. So it's a really tough space to be. So unlike the tieflings, who are automatically assumed to be these evil, dark, nefarious creatures, the half-orc is dismissed as being this brutish product of a rather unfair union. Is that the case, though? And should that be the case when we look at the half-orc? Half-orcs are, according to the books, emotionally expressive. They laugh for joy when they're happy, and they get sullen and morose when they are unhappy. They prefer to have an emotional reaction to something rather than be reserved, calm and collected. Well, there's no surprises there. That's both the human origin and the orcish origin coming through. So they have these strong emotions. Now, how do they feel about being half-orc? That's a question that you're going to have to answer, and one that you're going to have to chat with your GM with quite closely. Now, this is something that I would advocate anyway, but when playing a half-orc, you need to understand what orcs are like in the world that you're playing in. Are they the typical World of Warcraft style orcs that are very tribal, very horde-like, where there's lots of bravado, lots of showing of power, with an evil warlock who rules all and manipulates everything? Or are they more orcish in terms of, say, Peter Jackson's interpretation of orcs, where they're these really mud-crusted, vile creatures that don't really have much of a social life? They're more just bred for war. Whatever your GM's orcs are, they'll be somewhere in between, or a mixture thereof, or something completely different. You need to understand where they're coming from, and now there is a reason why. You need to decide your origin story. Now, the origin story here is, how did your parents conceive? Was it an orcish mother to a human lover or slave? Was it an orcish male to a human female? Was it a rape? Or was it absolute love? Was it forbidden love? Was it something that was of mutual consent or not? That origin story is important because, and please don't do the "I don't know, I was raised on the steps of a church." That's been done. You're a half-orc. Embrace your half-orc-ness. Seek out that question. How did your parents have sex and generate you? And how did that then translate into your existence? So if it was a violent raping of your mother or of your father, because that happens, how did you come into this world, and how did you stay in it? If you were an unwanted product, how did you not die? Were you given to an orphanage? That could be your orphanage story. But at least you know where you came from and how you were made. If it was a product of a match made in heaven, the orcs and the humans were in love, and it was a wonderful union, and it was a happy family, why did you leave? What motivated you to leave? If it was this unhappy union and you were forced to be a slave in the Orcish village where your mother raised you because she didn't want to kill you at birth, who knows? So do you see how that conception moment is so important? And then, of course, that stimulates all the years that come afterwards. So unlike other races where it doesn't really matter about your parents' history too much, what matters most for a half-orc is that moment that caused you to bring you into being. Because that moment will, through armchair psychology, inform you as to whether your half-orc embraces their orcishness or is ashamed of it. Are they trying to be more human or are they trying to be more orcish? Now, there is, in the older movies anyway, and in the original TV series, a great half being, that being Spock, the half Vulcan, half human from Star Trek. Now, he struggles with his halfness throughout the series and throughout the movies, until eventually reaching a space where he accepts he is both. Of course, it's not an orc and a human, but as far as the Vulcans are concerned, it certainly was. The humans being more like orcs as far as the Vulcans were concerned. Now, he struggles with it, and he embraced one side of his culture and tried actively to dismiss his other. And it created a fantastic story that is still repeated and retold in different ways. Now, of course, with modern day filmmaking, we tend to just accept everyone's backgrounds and everyone just accepts their past and all that kind of stuff. And so we don't really explore those kinds of subjects anymore. I think we should. Anyway, that's a difference of opinion. So, if you embrace your orcishness, what does that mean? Your GM knows what the orcs are like. What are their rituals? How do they beg for mercy? How do they greet one another? What are their cultural norms? All that is now something for you to bring to your character. Now, again, if we go back to looking at embracing one's culture, sometimes, if you discover that you have a particular historical ancestor and that culture appeals to you, you can go too far in embracing it. So the half-orc who is embracing their orcishness, they go beyond just what normal orcs are. They're going, that's some orcish mayhem right there. You can stop now. No, seriously, you can stop now. No, now you've gone too... We wouldn't do that. Oh my God, what are you doing? No. So you can take it to the next level where literally you are more orcish than the orcs. And I've seen that happen in real life, as a matter of fact. So there's that. The alternative is to resist against it and to push back and to deny it, but then to fail. Spock, as I've mentioned in his shows, he frequently failed and would admonish himself and absolutely get distraught that he was getting distraught about the fact that he failed to contain his human side, that he failed to contain that wild nature. So it becomes a great role-playing opportunity for you. So all of this just comes out of how were you conceived. Then you look at things like scars. Orcs treat scars as almost makeup. The more scars you have, the more battles you've been in, the better warrior you are, because you survived to get scars. If you're more human, those scars are reminders of your violent nature and will only serve to prove that you have a violent nature to other humans. So it's an interesting twist that you have to now answer. So that's something that you need to look at. Bring those customs to the table. Why do I say that? Well, because, again, it's about differentiation. It's about trying to convince your fellow players and your GM that you are a half-orc. That when they look at you as the player, they see a half-orc in it. Now notice, whenever I do orcs, I push my jaw forward and I lower my voice. And I stick my teeth out and I make my lips thinner, so that I get more orcish, and I go sort of lower side London-esque Cockney type of thing. I don't know why. But I stick my jaw forward because I can imagine these two tusks sitting here. Now, if you're not a performance actor, if you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But your mannerisms, the way that you describe how you behave, the way that you describe what you do, should then reveal to us, constantly remind us that there is this half-orcishness thing happening. So half-orcs, they're more than they just appear to be. They have these really strong powers, really strong strength, and all sorts of wonderful combat-based sort of racial attributes. Do you embrace them, Or do you spurn them and try and study magic? There's no reason why you can't, but we should at least understand why you chose to do that. And for me, that all comes back down to that wonderful question of who had sex with what and why. Anyway, until next time, I wish you and yours the happiest of playing.